I looked at it, saw the red. The August 14th, 2013 meeting of the Ascension Parish Planning Commission will now come to order. Madam Secretary, please note that all members are present. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, before we start, my monitor, who do I need to speak to? My monitor isn't on.
While our tech support guy is taking care of that, let's have the staff introduce themselves again. Stacy?
Stacy Webb, Secretary for Planning and Development.
Lindsay Manda, Legal Counsel for Planning and Zoning.
Ricky Compton, Planning and Development Director.
Ben Moran, planner.
Tim Ward, engineering.
Lance Brock, Zoning Official and Technical Director.
LaVarn Bourgeois, Building Official.
Thank you very much, and thank you for what you do for our parish. Item 5, Chairman's comments. The Chair has no comments for this meeting. Item number 6, approval or denial of the minutes of the July 10, 2013 Planning Commission meeting. What is your pleasure?
Move for approval.
Mr. Callender moves for approval. Second by Mr. Bishop. Any objection? Oh, if not, the minutes stand approved. Item 7 is a consent agenda. We have affidavits of mortgage declarations for Manchac Acre subdivision, lot 16A1B2 and 16A1AB, for the Thurman Wade James property, lots Z2A and Z3A, Riverwinds Estates at Pelican Point Golf Community, 9th filing, Phase 2, lot 497A, simple division. So we can, unless you want to pull any of these items out, we can approve the entire consent agenda with the motion. Mr. Burgess moves.
Second.
Mr. Bishop seconds. Any objection? The consent agenda then stands approved. Item number 8, public hearing to approve or deny the following family partitions. A is Edgar Gillis Jr., lots 3B, 3A1, 3B, 3B1, 3B, 3B2. Earls and Associates.
Yes, sir. James Fowler representing Mr. Gillis on the following family partition. Comments were made, addressed, and corrected on the plat, asking the commission for approval.
Okay. And I notice in the documents that staff recommends approval. Any questions, concern? Okay, let's open up the public hearing at this time. Do we have any cards on this one? No. Okay, none. Then we will close the public hearing. Any questions, comments? What's your pleasure?
Motion for approval.
Mr. Bishop moves for approval. Second by Mr. Ori. Any question, discussion? Any objection? Okay, that motion is approved and the family partition is approved.
Thank you.
B is the Vincent D. Diaz Sr., lots VD1A and VD1B. Mr. Aguilar and Associates, LLC.
Thank you. My name is Brian Aguilar, BM Aguilar and Associates, and I'm here representing Mr. Diaz for the family petition that you have in front of you, and we're asking for approval.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Aguilar? Okay. Again, we can open up public hearing. Any cards on this one? Okay. So we will close the public hearing. Any other questions, comments? Okay, that was Mr. Chafisi moved for approval.
Chairman.
Oh, I'm
Someone
sorry.
standing.
Oh, you'd like to make a comment?
Oh,
Yeah, I'd like to know what they're gonna do with it, 'cause I live across the street. I was told it's gonna be a single family home there.
Okay, if you'd like to come up, fill out a card and go on the record why don't you do that? Come on up, fill out a card, and then get in front of the microphone and camera. And, come on. and ask you a question.
Not to get her nervous.
Are the cards up there, Steve?
This,
Okay. Yeah, please. And if you would identify yourself.
Renee Withers, and
Okay.
I live across the street from the said property, and I just wanted to know if this was a backdoor to doing some other kind of development other than a single-family home. Okay, I mean, it's like it'd be a neighborhood or trailer park or something like that. We're just really concerned.
I understand.
Family partition.
It is a family partition. You want to come up and explain?
Yes. As far as I know, he's just wanting to subdivide this lot out to his son so he can build a single-family residence. If he has any plans to do anything else, that I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I heard through the grapevine that was something different, but
Okay. And how many
There is
lots
a
are
pipe.
going to be created out of this? 2, huh?
2, yes, sir.
Yeah.
what about the pipeline that runs through pretty much the middle of it? I mean, you can't build on that. I'm just curious.
No, I mean, he can still divide the property, but the building would be governed by that outside of this agreement here.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Any other public comments? Okay, let's go ahead then and close the public hearing. Any other questions of the commissioners? Okay, what is your pleasure here?
I'll move for approval.
Mr. Chaffetzi moves for approval. Mr. Burgess seconds. Any other questions? Any objections? Okay, the partition stands approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, brings us to item number 9. A public hearing to recommend approval or denial to the Parish Council revisions to the Ascension Parish Unified Land Development Code. Ordinance DC 39, revisions to Development Code, zoning tables, and subdivision regulations of the Unified Land Development Code pertaining to design regulations for major subdivisions. And this has received a little bit of notice in the press over the last few days, and we would encourage public input here. If you'd like to speak to this item and you have not yet filled out a card, please go ahead and do so. How many do we have, Stacy? 2, okay. Before we get to the public hearing part of it, though, let's go ahead and get a presentation from staff, from Mr. Compton. Let's kind of back up a little bit and see where we are with, review what we've done over the last 3 or 4 months, and get really specific in terms of what this ordinance would stipulate.
Okay, so I'm going to read straight from the packet in case anyone at home or anyone up there hasn't read it or seen it. The purpose of the proposed revisions is to create a new way for major subdivisions to be developed. Over the past 2+ decades, the subdivision regulations, along with the development code and zoning tables, have set minimum standards for how a major subdivision was to be designed and platted. These new standards establish design guidelines that allow for narrower lots to be platted, thereby increasing the density of the property while not surpassing the density allowed by the zoning map, in exchange for providing sidewalks, trees, and parks and open space. So what this package and these code revisions begins to do is establish what I'm calling major subdivision design guidelines. Excuse me. What I'd like to do is go through the package and hit on the items, because I have received about 4 or 5 comments via phone calls, emails, and meetings. And what I'd like to do is just go through and address the items of concern from those people and how I would like to amend what was put in front of you to address those comments.
Okay. And while you're doing that, could we maybe have it on display for the audience to see each particular, as you talk about the sections, we could get them up there where they can actually see the wording of the proposal?
We could try.
Like when we talk about trees, or when we talk about, there's our IT guy again, right? Okay. I just want for the people in the audience to be able to see specifically what we're talking about here.
I don't know that they're going to be able to read it, but we'll try. That camera's not that great. Okay, so I'm going to skip to the second page because all the first page really does is talk about which section of the code we want them to look at when designing a major subdivision. So the new proposed section 174020 talks about A, applicability. This section establishes design guidelines for major subdivision development. This section is not applicable for simple divisions, family partitions, minor subdivisions, spuds, PUDs, or T&D developments.
And how do we define a major subdivision? How many lots?
Anything 20 lots or more.
Okay.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to amend it and add a number 2 that says subdivisions created in light, medium, or heavy industrial districts are exempt from these requirements. We're going to see a growth in our industrial corridor where we have light, medium, and industrial, heavy industrial zoning. And if somebody wants to come in and do that type of a subdivision, I don't think we need to hold them to the sidewalk, street tree, and
Trees and
park
so forth,
standards.
right.
So
Gotcha.
exempting those zoning categories from this requirement.
Okay.
The category C, or item C, net density, there's a grammatical error that I want to fix. Net density is calculated by subtracting out any portion of pipeline servitude right-of-ways that are not within a developable lot, existing road right-of-ways, existing drainage servitudes that are not mitigated. You know, we've gotten into this net area discussion. That is probably what somebody is going to speak here tonight on, but that hasn't changed from the first 4 or 5 times that we've talked about it, other than some of the language in there. The next one, on item 2 under net density, is one of the comments from the National Association of Home Builders, and it really is just grammatical. I referenced net density. No major subdivision will exceed a net density allowed by the existing underlying zoning. That should read gross, so that's just changing the word from net to gross. In item D, lot standards, building setback lines, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, those are all in the existing code today, and I've just moved them into this section so that someone designing a major subdivision will just go to this one section. They won't have to flip to a bunch of different sections. Okay, so lot width standards, number 2, is another comment from the National Home Builder letter. It currently reads, no more than 90% of a single lot width shall be allowed in any major subdivision. But if you flip to the back where we've got the table that we would be adding to our zoning code, the table shows A housing types going up to 100%. So I wanted to get the commission's feel on this. Do we think it's okay to have 100% of one lot type if those lots are 110 feet wide? Or do we want to reduce that to 95% so that we just change the code that basically says if you're going to do 110-foot lots, you can use 95% of them, but we still want to see a mix of some other lot size in there? Or are we okay with 100% of one lot size in a subdivision? Do we have an opinion?
So you would be forcing 5% of the lots to go smaller than the 110 foot that the
Or
engineer
bigger.
would want?
Or bigger.
Oh, or bigger? That's how you just...
Or are we okay at 110 feet or bigger that they could be 100% of a single lot size?
I'm all right with the, I'm sorry.
No,
The
Mr. Bishop?
100% since,
Use the mic.
I'm all right with the 100% since 5% less would be an insignificant number, really.
And I'm okay either way. It was an error where I put it one number in one section, another in another, and didn't really catch it. So if we just want to change it to we're okay with 100%, then I'm just going to eliminate the text that says no more than 90%. I'm just going to eliminate that whole line. And that number A, or letter A, will start with table C defines the maximum allowed percentage of a single lot width within a subdivision.
The National Builders Association recommended you changing it from 90% to 95?
They recommended removing the discrepancy, one way or the other.
Between the chart and this?
Yes, sir.
description. Okay.
Has that idea come up? I mean, have developers mentioned that as a concern of theirs?
We've heard that they're not necessarily interested in building subdivisions with multiple lot sizes. When you get up to 110-foot lots, nobody's building that size subdivision anyway, so it sort of gets to, well, I'm probably okay with them building 100% of them. So
Okay. But for the smaller ones, the 90%, there's,
For the
concern
smaller
about-
ones, it drops down, and the easy way to see it is, as you get down to 50-foot wide lots, typically it's 50%. If you get to 60-foot lots, it's 60%, 70-foot is 70%. But if you do a side entry where the garage isn't facing the street, we've given them a 10% bump, because that's a more attractive house from the street.
All right. Okay.
So we want to leave it at 100%?
Any objection to that?
No,
Okay.
I like the
Okay,
100%.
all
I
right,
think the
fine.
5%.
All right, so I'm just going to strike that line. The National Association of Home Builder letter also had a problem with using the term "for good reason." That is out of our existing code. I copied it straight direct, and so I'm okay with eliminating it because they recommended it just say, unless waived by the Ascension Parish Planning and Zoning Commission. Just remove the words "for good reason" because it's subjective.
Right.
If you guys decide to waive that requirement, you guys have that right.
And that's the good reason.
That's right. So that's block standards number 1 and number 3. I'm going to eliminate that term. The letter also said that item 5, which once again is out of our current code, is confusing and they don't understand what it means. You know, I sort of like it because what it says is when a normal block arrangement is impossible or undesirable, there may be established one or more places. Such a place may be in the form of a court, a street with a cul-de-sac, T-turnaround, or other arrangement approved by the Planning Commission, provided, however, that proper access shall be given to all lots from a dedicated street or court. And what that's saying is, because it's in the block standards section, that in a subdivision, you may not be able to cut a block by another street or adding a park, but if you do a cul-de-sac at the end, maybe with a green space or an eyebrow in an area where you need to break the block length, or even houses that front on a muse and you do an alley or something, this gives some flexibility for those developers that need to do something a little different or a little off. You know, they use the term places in quotes. This isn't something you would see in a standard code, but it's in our code today, and I kind of don't mind it staying because it does give that flexible kind of language. Any opinion on that?
Again, I agree with Mr. Compton on that point because it offers flexibility.
Okay.
Force flexibility or offer it? I mean, does it force you to do this? I mean, is it offering flexibility or is
No,
it
it doesn't force
forcing
it. This is
Is it-
basically saying that in cases where you can't meet the block length standard, you can do this other thing to resolve that issue. And it gives, once again, the flexibility to you guys, for good reason, to approve it.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay.
All right, section G, under the pedestrian system heading, item 2A, it reads, "The pedestrian system shall be a 4-foot concrete sidewalk, an asphalt trail, or raised wood boardwalk, or any combination thereto." I've had multiple conversations with a very specific developer who says he can give me a cross-section for an unpaved trail section that would meet our approval. I still haven't got it, but I still would like to explore that option of putting some language in here that if you build an unpaved trail section to this standard, it's acceptable. So that necessarily they don't have to do concrete or asphalt or boardwalk, but, so
What would that look, I mean, an unpaved,
I think what it would be is you'd have to cut some section into the earth, you'd have to compact the ground, you'd probably have to do some kind of a weed barrier, some kind of a subsurface base, and then compacted gravel, limestone, something on top of it. You'd be building a trail. Today, what they do is they sort of run a bulldozer and then just drop limestone, and that's considered a trail. And after about 3 months, that thing is
can't see it,
gone.
right. Okay.
Okay, so under park requirements, the National Association for Home Builders had an issue with my 3.5 persons per household number, saying that we should use a national standard. I went to the census website. I found that Louisiana is 2.86 persons per household, so I'm okay dropping the number to 2.86. But what I'd like to do is raise the acres per thousand to 7.5 to make up that difference.
So H1 then would read 7.5.
Acres per thousand population generated by the new major subdivision, 2.86 persons per household shall be provided as recreation park space. And that is prorated. So if you do a 30-lot subdivision, you're not providing 7.5 acres. It's 30 lots times 2.86 divided by 1,000 times 7.5, and that gives you
Give the acreage then.
0.6 acres or some smaller area.
Okay.
Okay.
The other comment from the home builder was that the way the code is written, it implies that the developer can only build one park. And so what I'd like to do is in between 4 and 5 is add a number that says required park acreage may be split into multiple parks. However, no park shall be less than 0.5 acres in size. Basically giving flexibility that if they want to split parks up, they can do that, but a pocket park, in our opinion, is no smaller than a half an acre.
Okay. Any questions, comments about that? Okay, good.
Item 5A2, I need to amend the code to say a sign identifying this place as a private park. These are going to be private for each individual HOA. These are not public parks that are accessible to the general public. If somebody builds a pool as part of their subdivision, that's a private park. And so I want the code to be clear, these are private and not public.
Okay.
That came from multiple developers, by the way. All right, skip forward 2 pages. And under section H, again, park requirements, number 7, I'd like to add some language in there that reads, however, it reads currently, if the project is only one filing, this is talking about the parks, the park must be completed before the final plat is approved. I'd like to add the line, however, landscaping may be withheld until water service has been provided to the park. Basically saying to the developer, we don't want you to install plants that are going to die because they don't have ability to get sprinkled.
Right. Okay.
And then the line after that, if more than one filing, the park must be completed before the final plat is approved for the second filing. So we're basically saying if you're doing this in multiple filings because it's so many lots, get your first filing built, get your second plat approved, or your second preliminary plat approved, get your construction drawings approved. When you're ready to final your second filing, we want that park built for that first filing group of residents. Give them time to build some equity into the project.
Okay.
And I'd like to add number 8. Subdivisions where the average lot size for at least 70% of the total lots is at least 1 acre are exempt from the park requirements. So if a developer wants to build a large lot subdivision, we do not need a park. Those homeowners are going to have plenty of space on their individual lots to recreate. We do not need to take more land from them for a park.
Okay.
Any objections?
No, I like that.
That makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Under tree requirements, number 1, it reads, 1 street tree shall be planted along every street in a major subdivision located on every lot. The home builders said we shouldn't be building trees on every lot for the streets, and so I just want that to read in front of every lot. I want every lot to have a street tree in front of it. That was the implication. I'm just going to add that clarity into the code so that that tree is planted in the right-of-way, but in front of every lot. You understand what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to add number C, or letter C, under that same number 1, that says trees shall be installed prior to the CO being issued for each lot. We do not expect the builder contractor to put those street trees in when they're building infrastructure. Those trees need to be planted when a home is being built, when a homeowner can maintain them. Yes, sir.
Of course, when you describe a street tree, is that defined somewhere as to what that is?
No, I think that we probably should add a little, a section that talks about what a Class A street tree is, because we do have a little section in the park where it talks about ornamental type trees, and I think just maybe referencing that section, so, you know, your Class A trees are this, your ornamentals are this. You know, a crepe myrtle is not a street tree, but an elm is. Not a Drake elm, but an American elm. You know, sort of list out those street tree types, and I think adding that would be a good idea.
Yes, we wouldn't want a whole street full of Chinese tallow trees.
No, or willows. Okay, so there was some confusion once again from the home builders about the tree preservation language. I was trying to keep it simple. So the language currently reads, lot trees. Each lot within the major subdivision shall have a minimum of 1 tree. I want to revise that to read, if no existing trees are preserved, each lot within the major subdivision shall have a minimum of 1 tree. So when you get to the tree preservation section, it reads, trees with a trunk diameter greater than 24 inches that have been preserved may be counted toward the yard tree planting requirement out of a ratio of 2:1. What I was trying to get to is, if you have 100 lots in your subdivision, and we're saying each lot must have a tree, the line says trees shall have a caliper of 2.5 inch, caliper and be at least 8 feet tall. So 100 lots times 2.5 inches is 250 inches. If you're going to preserve 50 inches worth of oak trees, we're going to credit that 2 to 1. So you're going to get 100 inches of credit. So therefore, you only have to plant 150 inches of new trees. We could probably add some clarity language in there that says these new trees should be placed away from the preserved trees so that the rest of the subdivision gets the benefit of that new canopy. But that's the intent. It's more of a math problem than anything else. Is if you preserve trees, we think that's a good thing, as long as, once again, you're not preserving tallow trees or sweet gums. Let's preserve some oaks or big trees that are vintage character trees here in Ascension Parish. I think that we should eliminate the line, however, each lot must still have a minimum of 1 new planted tree, because if somebody's preserving trees, we don't still want to require every lot to have a tree. We're giving them a benefit for preserving trees elsewhere. Yes, sir.
I've lived in subdivisions where the wrong kind of tree was chosen. The size was okay, but the root system tended to find its way into infrastructure, tore up the neighboring street, or went into drainage pipes. So if there's any kind of research that could be done to say which ones tend to travel down versus out or something like that, we don't want to plant something that we'll be paying for later.
We'll have a list for you next meeting. And then lastly, on the last page there, it's existing and proposed. It talks about some of the sections where I've moved some language. And one of the ones that I had a question about was 174040. Currently, I'm asking, do we leave section C on cul-de-sac and T turnaround requirements, or eliminate the requirement, or redefine minor and major subdivisions? It's one of those pieces of language that I don't have the language in front of me. I'm going to look it up while we get public comment so I can get more clarity from how we want to address it. It's a section of the code that we constantly deal with family partitions, because it says any subdivision of land where it's greater than a certain distance or a greater number of lots, you have to have a T turnaround. I was eliminating the whole section because I moved the language into the major subdivision section, but that would mean that you no longer require T turnarounds in a family partition, and I don't think we're there yet. So let me look that up. Let's get the public comment, and then we'll go back to that one.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Compton before we?
Maybe
go to
with the
public?
trees, I'm kind of confused on some of this, the tree situation. Like Ricky, my subdivision restrictions require that each lot has a tree in the front of the, each lot has to have a tree. So what you're saying is that the developer would have to put a tree within the right-of-way in front of each lot. If it's a 55-foot wide lot, every 55 foot you would have a tree within the
Correct.
right-of-way, in addition to having to have a tree put in the front yard of the house for 2 trees
Correct.
on each lot? No matter the size of the neighborhood or the lot?
That's up for discussion. I originally had 2 trees per lot plus the street tree, and I reduced it to 1 because I was told by a builder that when you get down to the smaller lots, you probably only have room either in the front or the back for that tree.
Right.
I originally was thinking I wanted one in both, but I was talked down to 1, which I was okay with, because if I'm getting a street tree, then that means you probably put that other tree in the back.
And the street tree would be between the sidewalk and the road?
Yes, sir, in the Greenway Parkway area.
Okay.
And who would maintain those trees?
The HOA.
Okay. And the tree, the new tree that would be planted in the lot, if there's a new tree, can't be planted until somebody lives there. Right.
I would say
That's
until
how- that's how our
the CO is
subdivision is.
issued for that house, we would want the tree to be planted.
When the, I'm sorry,
When the
what?
CO is issued for that house, the certificate of occupancy,
Yeah.
we would want the tree planted before we issue the CO.
Well,
Otherwise,
yeah,
we would never get it
You
back.
have to have somebody there to take care of the tree.
Right.
That's all. That's what our subdivision does, and that seems to work.
Okay, any other questions, comments of Mr. Compton? Okay, let's, at this point then, open the public hearing. Who do we have, Stacy?
Doug Billion.
And typically, we give a 3-minute limit on this, but since we just have just a couple of speakers, and it is a fairly complex issue, we will waive that up to a certain point. If it gets past midnight, we may cut you off, but we'd like to allow for as much public input as we could. So identify yourself, please.
My name is Douglas Villian. I am a planning consultant, and I've been asked by a developer to track the process here and make some comments relating to our review of the proposed amendments. I have 2 or 3 major aspects that I'd like to address, and I'd like to point out that the present density requirements of the zoning code are not broken. The amendment to the subdivision regulations appear to be a reaction to a perceived problem about the density within the parish. Every major subdivision approved and developed in this parish to date complies with the density requirements as determined by the zoning district. A developer should have the flexibility to build within the established requirements of the zoning district and not be subjected to additional requirements controlled by net density. The use of net density ultimately reduces the potential number of lots for a subdivision site. Gross density, not net density, in the subdivision approval process is a standard across the nation and only used in heavily populated areas. According to the Ascension Parish zoning ordinance, there are 12 principles to be followed in managed growth. There are 3 of them are managed growth, preserve the rural character of the parish, and keep the process simple and open. The instrument that manages that growth is the zoning ordinance. Densities and lot sizes already established in that regulation are already established in that regulation, and the growth if the growth is unmanageable, then I think the zoning ordinance needs to be reevaluated and change the criteria within each zone. The proposed amendment will also require mixed lot sizes within large subdivisions. This is in contradiction to the developer's ability to market a product within his subdivision with comparable values. Heretofore, developers have done very well without this change, without the requirements that specify maximum percentages of varying lot sizes. The proposed regulation is an attempt to reduce the limit the developer's freedom of choice within his project. If the developer complies with current zoning requirements, he should have the freedom to build lots according to those underlying zoning requirements. Requiring a mix of lot sizes has nothing to do with managing growth, preserving the rural character, or keeping the process simple. The proposed amendment also requires a 200-foot buffer between compatible uses. In this example, the purpose of a buffer is to separate incompatible land uses. Single-family detached dwelling units are not incompatible. So if you have single-family detached dwelling units within this subdivision and single-family detached lots outside of this subdivision, they are compatible land uses. The 200-foot or 66-yard buffer is an unjust taking of land. It may become an attractive nuisance. It may become a perpetual maintenance issue for homeowners associations. In this example, this is a 100-acre tract of about 250 lots, bordered on 3 sides, assuming on 3 sides, by a large lot subdivisions. That 200-foot buffer would be required on 3 sides of this project. That would equate to 32 acres, or 32% of land taken out of market, out of commerce, immediately. And immediately it would be a loss that makes the project cost prohibitive. Additionally, a developer would have to give approximately maybe 6 acres for park and recreation. Then, of course, there's those other things, factors that are normally incurred, like wetlands, right-of-way, wastewater treatment, and detention. Assuming the requirements call for mowing and maintaining of this 200-foot buffer, for obvious reasons, the homeowners association would incur a perpetual maintenance bill, probably a very high maintenance bill. However, if the vegetation, the obvious, would be not maintained and allowed to grow up, then of course you have a security and safety issue. Those are my comments, and for those reasons, I'm in opposition to these amendments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions before we go to our next speaker? Okay, who's next?
Can I comment real quick?
Oh, yes.
The code doesn't say you have to have a buffer. The code says you can do a buffer, or you can develop it to what the current underlying zoning allows. So if this subdivision is located in rural, I would assume the developer would lot that 200-foot area with half-acre lots, which is essentially going to be 100 or 110 foot by 200 foot deep of half-acre lots. I would not expect somebody just to leave that as pasture land if the surrounding large lot residential was already there. I just wouldn't expect that. That the code says a buffer or lot it out to what the current underlying zoning allows. I would never expect somebody to just leave it as undeveloped buffer if there's already houses there.
Which one discusses the buffer on here, Ricky?
F, major subdivision located in rural or conservation zoning. The give and take. If we allow a developer to build lots smaller than a half acre in rural, we just want them to preserve 200 feet around the perimeter where they keep it a half acre. We haven't taken that property out of commerce. We've taken that 200 feet out of being able to build a 50-foot
Smaller
lot.
lot, I see.
Which they wouldn't be allowed to do anyway because it's
Correct.
zoned
Conservation or
rural conservation.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Well, he makes sense. However, you're creating a much larger lot than the rest of the development.
But it is the size of the lot
But
that,
you're-
that's zoned for, right?
Yes.
You'd be,
You're requiring a lot. If he's zoned for smaller lots, then he doesn't, in the current ordinance, he's not required to have a 200-foot backyard.
If he's zoned for smaller lots, there's no buffer requirement. It's only where he's zoned for half acre or 1 acre lots.
All right. See.
And then also, his other comment about gross instead of net, you're going to correct that, right?
My argument is simple. You cannot build on the area that we're subtracting out for net anyway. There's no houses built where he drew the ravine running through the middle. So we've just taken that out of the calculation. But the fact of the matter is, if we allow you to build smaller than half-acre lots, that acreage is going to be, you're going to take that up in multipliers because you've able to reduce your lot size. If the market wants half-acre lots out there in rural, we've already said that 110-foot lots, you can do 100% of the total development. I mean, we're just getting you to net be able to get more if you want to, up to 1 unit per acre, 2 units per acre, or 3 based on your underlying zoning. You're already not building on the area we're taking out for net.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Our next speaker, Stacy.
Billy Aguilar.
Welcome back, Mr. Aguilar.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, ladies of the staff, Ricky. Hey, you know, Ricky's got a lot of good ideas. I know he works hard on this, and you know, of course, me and Ricky have discussions all the time about this stuff. But let's kind of start off let's look at net area, net density area. And, you know, you're telling us we got to take out pipelines and lakes and wetlands areas, that's non-mitigated wetlands. I'm not necessarily against the non-mitigated wetlands areas, but we still got to buy all this property. If I go buy 100 acres and it's got 15, 20 acres of wetlands in it, it's got a lake on it, that's another 5 acres, it's got a pipeline running down through the middle of it, I really can't use that property anyway. All we asking is that some of it be used as green space and/or as park areas, which it can be. I mean, you can take wetland areas that floods sometimes of the year, and underbrush it and use it as a park, an outdoor park area. And I'm saying we ought to be allowed to use some of that stuff. As far as lot sizes go, I don't think a 70-foot lot or a 80-foot lot makes a whole lot of difference, but when Ricky has a table that says, well, you got to build this kind of house on this kind of lot, and this size lot and this size, it's kind of telling us what kind of houses we got to build, and that's not right. You know, people want to live in, if we could build a house, a subdivision that has $300,000 houses in it, and say that's a 3,000 square foot house, we don't want a 2,000 square foot house next to it. The appraisals don't work right, and the comps don't work right. I mean, I don't want to live in a 300,000 square foot, a 3,000 square foot house next to a 2,000 square foot house in a subdivision. Nobody else does. They want to live in subdivisions that have like houses in them, and everybody's in the same, and I hate to say this, but in the same economic condition or whatever that they living in. So if you take out the net density areas and we do different lot sizes, and I'm not necessarily opposed to the lot sizes, but then you add the sidewalks to the subdivision, you add the trees to the subdivision, and we take out the net areas where we're losing money on our investment on property, and then we got to come back in and do a park anywhere from, say, an acre to 7.5 acres or even more, depending on what you're doing. The prices that we paying to develop land today is between $35,000 and $55,000 an acre. So you're asking us to give you 6 acres for a park. If it's $50,000, that's $300,000 of property we're going to give you. And Ricky said, well, we're going to let you build smaller lots to pay for that. Well, if I got to go invest and build this park and spend $500,000 to build this park, and he gives me 10 more lots that I can sell at $50,000, I got 500 for 500,000. But I got to make the initial 500,000 investment and hope I can sell those 10 lots to get my money back. And I may not be able to. So when you put all this together, what basically is going to happen, the consumer is going to pay for it. Sooner or later, the consumer's got to pay for all this. You're going to add $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to the cost of every lot that we got in this parish because of the things that we're trying to add to this thing today. And it's just, at this time, it's just not feasible. It's just not economical for us as developers to do it. And you're going to wind up with people like DSLD and D.R. Horton being only developers in this parish because they're the only people that have the cash to do it. The banks aren't going to loan us the $500,000 to go build a park to put in this thing. And like Ricky said, well, we're going to defer that cost to the second filing. Well, if you're doing a subdivision, you got a first, second, or third filing, generally you make nothing on the first filing as a developer. You make some of your money back in the second filing, you make your profit in the third filing. Because you got all the land costs and all the development costs and all the engineering costs in the first filing. So we're going to have to go borrow the money to build a park in the second filing, which is going to put us in the hole in the second filing. So we ain't going to make any money till we get to the third filing. So the little guys like me and some of the other smaller developers out here won't be able to develop subdivisions under all these regulations. And I'm opposed to, not necessarily everything in here, because Ricky's got some good ideas on some things, but I'm opposed to the sidewalks, the trees. And usually in a typical subdivision, the homeowners association or the developer puts in his restrictions that they have to do landscaping. There's a landscaping plan, and we don't want to put, Public Works basically doesn't want any, they tell us we got to clear the servitudes for drainage, we got to clear the servitudes for the street. So we, basically, the parish is telling us we got to clear the stuff to begin with. We don't necessarily want to clear all the trees off the lots, but we have to. You got to clear the buildable areas, all the servitudes, the back, the front, the streets. And if we plant a street tree, in that, next to that street tree, you're going to have either sewer, water, gas, electric, cable, all of those utilities within 10 or 15 foot of that street tree. And I'm saying it's not a good place to put a street tree. When you're backing out your driveway, it's going to block your view. The street tree ought to be, if you're going to have sidewalks, on the other side of the sidewalk inside the lot, close to the house. Anyway, that's my comments. Thank you for your time.
Any questions?
Ricky, what's you guys' take on the allowing like wetlands and allowing pipelines and things like that, servitudes, to be included in some of this green space?
Several concessions have been made, and if you look at the code, it's different from the first time you saw it 3 or 4 months ago. One of them is net density is calculated by subtracting out any portion of pipeline servitudes and right-of-ways that is not within a developable lot. So if your subdivision layout has a pipeline that, for whatever reason or however it's designed, you can sort of split that servitude between lots, and it's part of the lot, then that area is calculated for your net density because you're using it in your development. If it's some kind of a diagonal swath that just doesn't work out with your layout and it's really just left out as a green space, that doesn't count. If the developer wants to call a pipeline a park, that's up to them. But we're not going to call a pipeline a park because it doesn't meet what I would consider safety criteria for what a park actually is. The wetlands, we actually added a concession there that says wetlands, wet and dry stormwater ponds, and lands that are periodically inundated and unusable are not acceptable parks unless there have been improvements made to make them publicly accessible. So if you want to count a wetland, build a boardwalk. You want to count a pond, build a pier, build a dock, build something, build a trail around it so that the people that are in that subdivision can use it. It's not just a place to look at. It's not a vista. A vista isn't a park. A vista is just something to look at. Make it accessible and we'll count it.
Any other questions, comments?
Just one comment, and I appreciate the developers in this parish. But one comment the consultant made was developers have done very well in this parish.
Yes.
I get that. Developers come and developers go, except for Mr. Aguilar, who stays. I think we're looking at this because we would like the citizens to do well in this, and that as we develop the little land we have left, it meets a better criteria than we've done in the past. And that's what I hope comes out of this. And I appreciate the work you've done.
Yeah. And another comment I may make is if a developer buys a piece of property and a certain percentage of it is undevelopable, then that's something you can negotiate with the seller. Say, well, I can't develop this, so I'm not going to pay as much money for it. I mean, that's the market. That's the way it works. I mean, if you buy something and half of it's wetlands, you can't do that, you won't spend as much money as you would if it were all developable, or you shouldn't. Well, they want to, but, you know. And they will be subject to these same restrictions that you would have been. Okay. Any other questions?
I just, one comment, and I mentioned this before. I lived in a subdivision in California that had sidewalks, a lot of trees, a lake with a path around it, bicycle path, very, very nice amenities. And the houses, we were in a relatively small house. Our house was 1,651 square feet. And there were 3,000 square foot houses in the same subdivision, but all the houses looked very similar in terms of style and color and quality. And I think that's what really mattered in the end. People bought the big houses in the subdivision. I appreciate what Mr. Aguilar is saying about that. I think typically that might be a good point. But I know it can be done where you have such a high quality product, even though it might be a smaller home or a larger home next to a smaller home, where all the homes are of such a quality that it's an attractive place to be. And that's just from my own personal experience with that, having lived in a subdivision in a smaller home.
Do we have any other cards, Stacy? Okay.
Ann Shaneyfeld.
Hello, my name is Ann Shaneyfelt. I've been kind of very much involved with some of the planning and all the meetings that we've had over the years, and I'm happy to see that we're getting back to work on trying to solve some of these issues that we have. After listening to Mr. Aguilar and to Ricky, it sounds like we're beginning to get enough compromises and flexibility worked into this to where we're not making it unattractive to do business in the parish, but while still protecting, like you said, protecting the citizens to where we have beautiful places to live with high-quality subdivisions that have the amenities that are going to draw people to the parish, and make them feel vested in us. Just throwing up little subdivisions, the one-way simple entries with none of the amenities, it's, you're not necessarily going to get people who feel vested in our parish. But when you start putting pocket parks and sidewalks people are going to start feeling more like this is home, this is a place I want to stay. And, you know, I believe that these subdivisions built this way are going to be very, very popular. And I believe that in the end, that developers are going to make their money off of it because the values are going to go up and they're going to be more attractive and they're going to be more in demand. And I really do love subdivisions that have a mix of housing sizes and lots, because then you get people, some people may not like it, but I like having people of different walks of life in my subdivision. I'm not saying, you know, build a slum next to, you know, a mansion, but a 1,500 square foot next to a 2,500 square foot house is not bad. Having a large lot next to a small lot is not bad either. You can have people who can start aging in place. You know, an elderly couple who wants to give up their huge yard and their huge house doesn't have to move all the way across town away from their grandkids. They can stay close by and still live in a nice area with beautiful amenities. So I really think that we're on the right track here. And, you know, some of the points that Mr. Aguilar had about, you know, the lines and the street, I think that's something that should be looked at. But I think we're getting there, and I do approve of what's going on so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, comments?
I wish we were as eloquent as she is.
Mr. Chairman?
Next, oh, wait, any other cards? No. That's the last speaker? Okay.
Comment. After listening to all the speakers, it seems to me that we're on the right track, and I agree wholeheartedly that something must be done. We need to make subdivisions more attractive and meet a few more requirements than simply a road with houses around it. But at the same time, I don't think at this point we're quite ready, or I don't feel we're quite ready to send this on to the council. I'd like to see us have at least one more discussion on this before we do that. I think we still have room for working out some of the differences on both ends, and I'd like to see us discuss this a little bit more before we send it on.
Now, the amendments you made to this, is that something that we need to discuss more, or do we work this into this? I mean, is this a document that we could, if we wanted to, pass on to the council?
Sure. If you wanted to make a recommendation to make these revisions and push it, you can do that. You can make a recommendation to make these revisions and bring it back next month. You can make a recommendation to make no revisions and let's just keep talking. It really is up to the will of the commission what you want to do.
Okay. Mr. Burgess?
I think with the changes we've made, it adds a certain complexity to it, and I too would like another chance just to walk through it.
Okay.
At the next meeting.
Yeah, I agree. Look, you have Mr.
Yeah.
Aguilar.
Mr. Aguilar?
You know, I would like to see y'all have another public hearing, and the reason is a lot of people didn't know about this meeting tonight, and Baton Rouge Homeowners Association or Baton Rouge Cavalry Regional Homeowners Association asked me to say something, and I sent a letter to a couple of people. I sent the comments to Ricky earlier from them. They would have liked to have some people here to speak about it, but they didn't know about it till late this afternoon, and I apologize that I didn't let them know because I've been out of town working in Covington for the last 2 months, and I hadn't really kept up on it. And anyway, I apologize for that, but I'd like to have another opportunity to get some other speakers up here. If we know we're going to have another public hearing next month, I'll make sure that some other people come to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Then what is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we pass this on to our next meeting for further discussion and public hearing.
Second?
In
Mr. Calendar?
conjunction with the revisions.
With the
that Ricky
revisions.
stated.
Yeah.
Correct,
Right.
correct.
Right.
I will do my best to get those revisions incorporated tomorrow or Friday, emailed back out and posted to the web, so anybody who wants to look at it and download it can have that opportunity.
So the general public could look at that and get an idea of where we are at this point?
Yes, sir.
Correct? Good.
And we'll start working on the tree list as well.
Thank you.
Can we
Okay.
get this in the paper any better than what we did? I mean, I know the Creole had an article on it, and
Yeah.
maybe if it can get advertised in a different manner. I'm not sure how it got advertised last time, other than that one article.
Don't see the press here. Maybe they're watching Channel 21?
Need to give them a call.
Oh. Well, he's not. Okay. Yeah, we will try to get as much public input into this as we can. And we have been talking for 3-4 months,
And it'll come time pretty soon where I think we need to take action. But there were several good points brought up here. So we have a motion and a second to put this on next, wait, who did we have a second? Mr. Burgess. To put this on next month's agenda and continue the public hearing and discussion. Any other questions, discussion? Any objection? Okay, that motion passes. Next item is number 10, staff report. Was that your staff report?
We'll call that the staff report.
Okay. All right, number 11 then, engineering staff report.
To talk about the construction that's going on. We have 7 developments that are in their bond period, which is 560 lots, once those are all built out. Currently, there are 4 subdivisions which are under construction. The infrastructure, streets and all are under construction. That's 186 lots. There are, we have 4 subdivisions which have been approved for construction, but they're waiting on construction for completion of previous phases. And that will be 240 lots. And then there are 2 subdivisions which are under review in the construction planning phase. And that totals 114 lots. So that's a grand total of 1,100 lots. So basically, that's the same number of lots that we had last month. Just some things have gone into bond, and they've been, progressing and all. Some have gone into construction, but it's still 1,100 lots.
Okay. Anything else?
Nope. That's
Okay. Thank you. And before we adjourn, I apologize, I have not recognized an elected official in the audience, Councilman Satterley, kind of in the background there, but I see you now, and I thank you for coming, and we appreciate your interest in the planning and zoning process, and we hope to continue to get the great support that we've gotten from the Parish Council in our efforts. Thank you for showing up. Anything else? Okay, item 12, adjournment. Moved by Mr. Bishop.
Second.
Second by Ms. Nizo. Any objection? Okay, we stand adjourned. The zoning commission will meet in about 5 minutes, at 5.